The observation deck of Harmony Station buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from two species prepared for their first formal meeting. Amelia Stone adjusted her deep blue diplomatic uniform. For the fifth time, her fingers trembling slightly, as she watched the alien vessel approach through the reinforced viewport. The ship moved with an otherworldly grace, its crystalline hull catching starlight and refracting it into dancing patterns of color. "Breathe, Amelia," she whispered to herself, recalling her training at the Terran Diplomatic Academy. 3 years of xenopsychology, comparative cultures, and interspecies protocol had led to this moment. As Earth's youngest cultural attaché, she carried the hopes of humanity on her shoulders. The docking bay announcement echoed through the station in multiple languages. Zephyrian delegation arriving at Bay 7. All diplomatic personnel to positions. Amelia made her way through the gleaming corridors of Harmony Station, a marvel of neutral engineering designed specifically for first contact scenarios. Neither human nor alien in design, it represented something entirely new, a bridge between worlds. At the reception hall, she took her place beside Ambassador Harrison and the rest of the human delegation. Across the room, empty spaces awaited their guests. The tension was palpable. Everyone knew this meeting would determine whether two civilizations would become friends or enemies. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The beings that entered were unlike anything she had imagined. They moved with fluid grace, their semi-translucent bodies catching and reflecting light in mesmerizing patterns. Their faces were angular yet beautiful, with large eyes that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom. Leading the group was a being whose crystalline features seemed more refined than the others. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his body composed of what appeared to be living gemstone. When he turned his gaze toward the human delegation, Amelia felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Ambassador Harrison began in carefully rehearsed universal standard. "I am Ambassador Harrison of Earth, and these are my colleagues." The lead alien stepped forward, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am Kethfer, speaker for the Zephyrian Collective. We come in peace, seeking understanding between our peoples." As formal introductions continued, Amelia found herself stealing glances at Kethfer. There was something about his presence that drew her attention, not just his alien beauty, but something deeper. When Ambassador Harrison introduced her as their cultural attaché, Kethfer's luminous eyes met hers. "Cultural attaché," he repeated, his pronunciation careful and precise. "You study the ways of peoples, yes. This interests me greatly. I seek to understand the hearts of others." "Yes," Amelia managed, surprised by how his attention affected her. "I believe that understanding each other's cultures is the key to lasting peace." Something flickered across Kethfer's features, an expression she couldn't quite read, but somehow understood as approval, perhaps even admiration. The formal ceremony proceeded with the exchange of gifts and peaceful intentions. Earth presented samples of art, music, and literature, while the Zephyrians shared crystalline sculptures that seemed to sing with harmonious frequencies. But throughout the proceedings, Amelia found her attention divided between diplomatic protocol and the enigmatic being across from her. During a break in negotiations, she found herself on the station's promenade, looking out at the stars. She had always found space calming, but tonight felt different. Everything felt different. "The stars look different from your world, I imagine," came a familiar melodic voice behind her. She turned to find Kethfer approaching, his form casting prismatic reflections on the metal floor. "They do," she admitted, "but they're still beautiful." "I suppose beauty is something that transcends species." "You think so?" Kethfer moved to stand beside her at the viewing port. "My people have long debated whether beauty is universal or merely a reflection of one's own nature." "And what do you think?" Amelia asked, genuinely curious. She had studied Zephyrian philosophy, but had never had the chance to discuss it with one of them directly. Kethfer was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline features reflecting the starlight. "I think perhaps I am beginning to understand that some forms of beauty transcend all boundaries," he said softly, glancing at her with those luminous eyes. The comment hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither quite dared to acknowledge. Here they were, representatives of two species meeting for the first time. And yet there was an unmistakable connection forming. "Tell me about your world," Amelia said, steering the conversation to safer ground while secretly hoping to learn more about this fascinating being. Kefir's expression grew wistful. "Zephyr is a world of living crystal and singing winds. Our cities grow, rather than being built, shaped by harmony and intention. We are a people who value emotional resonance above all else, the connections between beings. The symphonies of feeling that bind communities together." "That sounds beautiful," Amelia said, and meant it. "Earth is different. We're perhaps more chaotic, more individualistic, but we value connection too, in our own way. Yes, I have observed this in your delegation. There's a warmth among your people, how do you say, genuine care for one another. It is admirable." They stood together in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds finding unexpected common ground. Round them, Harmony Station hummed with activity, as their respective delegations continued their careful dance of diplomacy. "Kefir," Amelia said suddenly, then hesitated. What she wanted to say felt too bold, too presumptuous for a first meeting between species. "Yes," he encouraged gently. I hope this is the beginning of a lasting friendship between our peoples." It wasn't what she had wanted to say, but it was safe. Kefir turned to face her fully, his luminous eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her heart race. "As do I, Amelia Stone." As do I. The way he said her name, with careful attention to each syllable, sent an unexpected warmth through her. This was supposed to be about diplomacy, about the careful protocols of first contact. But something else was happening here, something neither of their peoples had prepared them for. The future of two civilizations might well depend on the connections formed in these crucial first days. Neither Amelia nor Kefir could have imagined that the most important connection might be the one growing between them, a bridge built not of politics or protocol, but of something far more powerful and dangerous, something that looked remarkably like the beginning of love. 3 weeks after first contact, the communication array aboard the human vessel Meridian hummed with routine diplomatic chatter. Jasper Reed sat alone in the quiet hours of the night shift, his fingers dancing across holographic displays as he monitored the endless stream of data flowing between the human and Zephyrian fleets. As Chief Communications Officer, Jasper had always found solace in the orderly world of signals and frequencies. Languages were puzzles to be solved, codes to be cracked, and he had a gift for both. But lately, one particular signal had captured his attention, a series of musical transmissions from the Zephyrian flagship that seemed too complex to be mere routine communications. The patterns were beautiful, almost like crystalline bells, ringing across the void. Jasper had been analyzing them for days, convinced they held meaning beyond the standard diplomatic exchanges. Tonight, working alone under the soft blue glow of his equipment, he finally cracked the underlying structure. It was poetry, not just any poetry, but deeply personal verses about longing and the beauty of distant stars. Someone aboard the Zephyrian vessel was transmitting their private thoughts into space, perhaps believing them too alien for human understanding. Jasper's conscience warred with his curiosity. These were obviously private transmissions, but they were being broadcast on open frequencies. As he debated his next move, a new signal arrived, different in tone, more questioning. The sender seemed to be asking if anyone was listening. Before he could second-guess himself, Jasper composed a response, not in standard diplomatic language, but in the same poetic structure he had decoded. A simple verse about finding beauty in unexpected places. He sent it. The response came within minutes, and Jasper's heart nearly stopped. The signal carried a trace of excitement, of wonder at finding an unexpected voice in the darkness. The message, when translated, read, "You understand our song speech. How is this possible?" "I study languages," Jasper transmitted back. "Patterns in communication fascinate me. Your poetry is beautiful." A longer pause. Then, "I am Velana, harmony keeper of the vessel Star Song. I did not expect human ears to hear the music in our words. I'm Jasper Reed, communications officer on the Meridian. I hope I'm not intruding. No, this is unexpected joy." We were told your people speak only in sharp, direct patterns, but you hear the song beneath words. What began as an accidental interception became a nightly ritual. After the formal diplomatic channels closed, Jasper would tune to Valana's frequency, and they would share poetry across the void. She taught him the deeper meanings of Zephyrian verse forms, while he introduced her to human concepts of rhythm and metaphor. Valana described herself as an empath translator, one who specialized in understanding the emotional undertones of communication. Her role was to help her people comprehend the complex feelings behind human words, to bridge the gap between species through understanding of emotional resonance. Your people feel so intensely, she transmitted one evening, when your ambassador spoke of Earth. I could sense layers of love, pride, and protective fear woven together. It was like listening to a symphony of the heart. And your people, Jasper asked, what do you feel when you speak of Zephyr, harmony? Came the reply, deep contentment, like being part of a greater song that spans generations. But lately, she paused, lately I feel something new, a discord, but not unpleasant, like a new note being added to a familiar melody. Jasper understood exactly what she meant. His own carefully ordered world had been disrupted by these nightly conversations. He found himself looking forward to the darkness of space, to those quiet hours when he could speak with the being who had begun to occupy more and more of his thoughts. Valana, he transmitted one night, tell me about yourself, not your duties or your people, but you. The response was longer in coming. This is difficult. We Zephyrians define ourselves through our connections to others, through our role in the greater harmony. But if I must speak of Valana alone, another pause. I love the quiet moments between songs. When the universe holds its breath, I find beauty in the spaces between stars. And I have always wondered what it would be like to hear a completely new melody. I think, Jasper replied carefully, you might be hearing one now. Yes, came her immediate response. Yes, I believe I am. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal. Valana shared her confusion about the growing tensions between their peoples. How some Zephyrians whispered fears about human intentions. Jasper confided his own concerns about the diplomatic process, his worry that formal protocols might miss the deeper connections that were possible between their species. Both our peoples seemed to be preparing for the possibility of conflict. Valana transmitted one evening, her usual musical tone tinged with sadness. Are you afraid? Jasper asked. Not of your people, she replied, but I fear what misunderstanding might cost us all. Jasper, what I feel when we communicate. Is this normal between species? The question hung in space between them. Jasper stared at his console, knowing that his answer would change everything. No, he finally admitted, I don't think it is. What we have, it's something new, something forbidden, maybe, but not something wrong. My harmony mates grow concerned. They sense changes in my emotional resonance, patterns they do not recognize. They fear I am losing my connection to Zephyrian consciousness. Are you? No, Valana replied without hesitation. I am finding new connections, different ones, deeper ones. Jasper closed his eyes, feeling the weight of regulations and protocols pressing down on him. Personal relationships with alien species were uncharted territory, potentially dangerous to diplomatic efforts. But what he felt for this being he had never seen, this voice in the darkness who understood poetry and beauty, was undeniably real. Valana, I need you to know something. These conversations have become the most important part of my day. You've become important to me, and you to me, Jasper Reed. More important than I should admit. They both understood the implications. To beings from different worlds, different species entirely, falling for each other across the void. It was unprecedented, complicated, and potentially catastrophic for the delicate diplomatic relations their peoples were trying to build. What do we do? Valana asked. Jasper looked out at the stars, at the distant lights of the Zephyrian fleet, knowing that somewhere among those vessels was a being who had become the center of his universe. I don't know, he admitted, but I can't stop talking to you nor I to you. Perhaps some songs are meant to be sung, regardless of the consequences. As their fleets continued their careful diplomatic dance, Two hearts had found their own rhythm across the impossible distance between species. Whatever came next, they would face it together, one forbidden transmission at a time. Marcus Webb had always believed that plants were more honest than people. In his greenhouse laboratory aboard the research station Genesis, surrounded by specimens from a dozen worlds, he found a peace that had eluded him in human society. The gentle hum of environmental controls and the sweet scent of alien blooms created a sanctuary where he could work without the complications of politics or protocol. The Joint Agricultural Project had been one of the few immediate successes of human-Zephyrian cooperation. Both species needed to understand how their respective food sources might grow in foreign environments, and the research station provided neutral ground for scientific collaboration. Marcus knelt beside a bed of earth tomatoes, their familiar red fruits a comfort against the backdrop of crystalline growing matrices that the Zephyrians preferred. His hands, stained with soil and plant nutrients, moved with practiced precision as he recorded growth patterns and nutrient absorption rates. "You speak to them," came a voice like flowing water behind him. Marcus startled, nearly dropping his tablet. He turned to find a Zephyrian standing in the doorway. But unlike the formal delegates he had seen during official ceremonies, this being seemed to glow with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with the plants around them. "I'm sorry," Marcus managed, climbing to his feet and wiping his hands on his lab coat. "The plants," the Zephyrian said, moving closer with movements that seemed to flow like liquid light. "You speak to them as you work. I can feel their response to your voice." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. It was an old habit, talking to his plants, one that most people found eccentric. "You can feel them responding." "I am Sylvie," the being said, extending what Marcus assumed was a gesture of greeting. "I tend the living ships of my people. We grow our vessels rather than build them, and they require constant communication to maintain their health and purpose." Living ships. Marcus stepped closer, his scientific curiosity overriding his social awkwardness. "How is that possible?" Sylvie's form brightened, clearly pleased by his interest. "Come, I will show you." She led him to the Zephyrian section of the greenhouse, where structures that looked more like coral reefs than traditional planters held specimens. Unlike anything in Marcus's experience, some appeared to be plants, others seemed more mineral, and a few defied classification entirely. "This is a seed essence of my ship, Starweaver," Sylvie explained, gesturing to what looked like a small tree made of living crystal. "She grows as I tend her, responding to my emotional state and the needs of those she carries." Marcus approached the specimen with wonder. "The ship is alive. All Zephyrian vessels are. We do not create machines to serve us. We nurture partnerships with living beings who choose to carry us through space. It requires constant attention, understanding, and love." "Love?" Marcus asked, surprised by the word. Sylvie's luminescence dimmed slightly, as if she had revealed something too personal. "Perhaps that translates poorly. We form bonds with our ships, deep connections that allow us to work as one entity. The ship feels our needs. We feel its health and happiness." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "It's not so different from what I do here. Plants respond to care, to attention, to the energy you put into tending them. I've always felt that growing things requires a kind of partnership." "Yes." Sylvie's brightness returned, and Marcus noticed that the crystalline tree seemed to pulse in response to her excitement. "You understand. Your people spoke of agriculture as if plants were merely resources to be exploited, but you see them as partners." They spent the next several hours walking through both sections of the greenhouse, sharing techniques and perspectives. Marcus showed her how earth plants responded to different soil compositions and light spectra, while Sylvie demonstrated how her specimens could actually communicate their needs through subtle changes in color and luminescence. "Your ship," Marcus said as they paused beside a section where earth roses grew intertwined with Zephyrian light vines. "Does it have consciousness, thoughts and feelings like you do?" Sylvie considered the question carefully. "Not as individuals. Think, Starweaver experiences existence more like a living ecosystem. She feels the health and happiness of all who live within her, the flow of energy through her systems, the joy of movement through space. She dreams, but her dreams are of harmony and purpose rather than individual desires. That's beautiful, Marcus said, and meant it. On Earth, we're just beginning to understand how forests communicate through root networks, how plants can share resources and warnings. What you're describing sounds like that concept extended to space travel. You study plant consciousness? Sylvie asked, moving closer. Marcus caught a scent like ozone and growing things, clean and alive. I study plant communication, symbiotic relationships, the ways different species can support each other's growth. It's why I was chosen for this project, to see if our agricultural systems could work together. And what have you discovered? Marcus gestured around the greenhouse, where Earth and Zephyrian specimens had indeed begun to thrive in mixed environments. That cooperation creates something more beautiful than either system alone. Look at this section the Earth beans are fixing nitrogen in the soil, which feeds your crystal roots. And they're producing some kind of energy field that's making the beans grow larger and healthier than they ever did alone. Sylvie moved to examine the intertwined plants, her form pulsing with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as excitement. They are singing to each other, she said with wonder. I can feel it, a harmony between your growing things and mine. Singing? All living things create resonances, energy patterns that reflect their health and purpose. Your plants sing in frequencies we had not heard before, but they harmonize with ours as if they were always meant to grow together. Marcus watched as she extended what seemed to be tendrils of light toward the mixed plantings, and to his amazement, both Earth and Zephyrian specimens responded, growing visibly healthier under her attention. How do you do that? He breathed. The same way you speak to your tomatoes, and they grow strong for you, Sylvie replied. I listen to what they need and try to provide it. You do the same, though perhaps you do not realize the depth of the connection you create. They work together through the station's day cycle, tending plants from both worlds and marveling at how well they thrived under combined care. Marcus found himself drawn to Sylvie's gentle presence, the way she moved through the greenhouse, like a living embodiment of growth and nurturing. Marcus, she said as they paused to rest beside a fountain that provided both water and mineral nutrients. May I ask you something personal? Of course. Why do you choose to spend your time with growing things rather than your own species? I sense in you a deep contentment here that fades when others of your kind approach. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, surprised by her perceptiveness. People are complicated, he finally said. They have agendas, hidden meanings, social games I never learned to play well. Plants are honest. They need light, water, nutrients, and care. When you provide those things, they thrive. When you don't, they tell you clearly what's wrong. There's no deception, no manipulation. And yet, Sylvie said gently, you have spoken more words to me in this day than I have heard you speak, in all the formal sessions combined. Do you find me complicated? Marcus looked at her, really looked, taking in the gentle luminescence, the way her presence seemed to calm everything around her, the obvious love she had for all living things. No, he admitted. I find you peaceful, like you're as honest as the plants you tend. Perhaps, she said, her light dimming to a soft, warm glow. That is because we have more in common than our species would suggest. We both love growing things. We both find peace in nurturing life. We both believe that cooperation creates more beauty than competition. Sylvie, Marcus said, his heart racing as he realized what he was about to admit. I think you might be right. I think we understand each other in ways that have nothing to do with being human or Zephyrian. Her luminescence brightened, and around them, every plant in the greenhouse seemed to respond, growing a little taller, blooming a little brighter, as if the connection forming between their caretakers was feeding them with pure joy. Marcus Webb, she said, his name sounding like music in her voice. I believe we are growing something together that neither of our peoples expected. As the station's artificial sunset painted the greenhouse in golden light, to gardeners from different worlds stood among their thriving plants, discovering that love, like the best gardens, flourished when given the right conditions to grow. Elena Vasquez had spent 15 years mediating conflicts across the galaxy, but she had never faced anything like this. The emergency session aboard Harmony Station crackled with tension, as representatives from both species argued in increasingly Heated tones. What had begun as promising diplomatic cooperation was rapidly deteriorating into accusations and mistrust. The humans have been conducting unauthorized surveillance, declared Speaker Kethfer, his crystalline form flickering. With agitation, our Harmony Keepers report emotional disruptions in our crews, patterns that suggest external manipulation. Ambassador Harrison stood firm at the human delegation table. We categorically deny any surveillance activities. Our people have followed all agreed-upon protocols for cultural exchange. Elena watched from her position as neutral mediator, her trained eye catching the subtle signs of deeper currents beneath the formal protests. Something was happening between these species that went beyond diplomatic misunderstandings, but neither side was willing to acknowledge it openly. Across the chamber, she noticed a lone Zephyrian sitting apart from his delegation. Unlike the others, he seemed more troubled than angry, his luminescent patterns cycling through what Elena recognized as contemplative, rather than aggressive displays. When their eyes met, she saw something unexpected doubt about his own people's position. During the recess, Elena approached him carefully. I don't believe we've been formally introduced. I'm Elena Vasquez, conflict resolution specialist. The being turned toward her, his features sharp but somehow kind. Turgan, strategic counselor to the Zephyrian fleet. Though I begin to wonder if my counsel carries any weight in these proceedings. You seem less certain than your colleagues about human intentions, Elena observed. Settling into a chair across from him, Turgan's luminescence dimmed. A sign Elena had learned indicated either sadness or deep thought. I have been analyzing the patterns of interaction between our species, and I find inconsistencies in the official narrative. What kind of inconsistencies? The emotional disruptions. My people report they do not match patterns of manipulation or deception. They match patterns of connection, genuine emotional bonding that crosses species boundaries. He paused, studying Elena's face. Your people are forming relationships with mine, are they not? Elena felt her pulse quicken. The growing connections between individuals from both species were exactly what she had suspected, but confirming it could be dangerous to the diplomatic process. What makes you think that? Because I am experiencing such a connection myself, Turgan admitted quietly. At this very moment, speaking with you, I feel resonances I have never experienced with another being. It should be impossible. Our emotional wavelengths are completely different, and yet here we are, Elena finished, feeling her own unexpected response to this thoughtful, conflicted alien who was brave enough to question his own people's assumptions. Indeed, here we are. Turgan's patterns shifted to what Elena was beginning to recognize as warmth. You mediate conflicts for a living. In your experience, what happens when the real issue is not what either side claims to be fighting about? Elena considered her words carefully. Usually it means both sides are afraid of something they can't name. The surface conflict becomes a way to avoid dealing with the deeper issue. And what might that deeper issue be in our case? The possibility that cooperation between our species might become something more than either government is prepared to handle, Elena said. Watching his reaction, Turgan was quiet for a long moment, his luminescence pulsing in slow, thoughtful rhythms. Elena Vasquez, may I share something with you that could be considered treasonous by my own people? I'm listening. I have been monitoring communications between our fleets, not for intelligence purposes, but to understand the emotional undercurrents of this first contact. What I have discovered is that individuals from both our species are forming bonds, friendships, partnerships, and perhaps something deeper at a rate that defies all statistical models. Elena leaned forward, intrigued. How many instances are we talking about? Dozens. Your communications officer and our Harmony Keeper have been exchanging poetry. Your botanist and our ship tender have created hybrid gardens that should be agriculturally impossible. Your cultural attaché and our speaker have been meeting privately despite protocols forbidding such interactions. You've been watching all of this, documenting, and trying to understand what it means for both our civilizations. Turgan's form brightened with what Elena recognized as excitement. Elena, I believe we are witnessing the first recorded instance of cross-species emotional compatibility. Not just tolerance or cooperation, but genuine affection and bonding. Elena felt a chill of both wonder and fear. and your people's leadership sees this as a threat. They see it as contamination. Zephyrian consciousness is built on harmony. Within the species, the idea that our emotional patterns could be altered by contact with humans terrifies them. They interpret these changes as evidence of human mental manipulation, while human leadership probably sees it as individuals going rogue. Compromising diplomatic objectivity, Elena added, understanding the full scope of the problem. Exactly. Both our governments are preparing for conflict based on their fear of something beautiful that is happening naturally between our peoples. The call to resume session interrupted their conversation, but as they returned to their respective positions, Elena found herself looking at the crisis with new understanding. The growing tensions weren't about surveillance or protocol violations. They were about love, connection, and the fear that such bonds might change both species in ways their leaders couldn't control. Representatives, Elena said, standing to address both delegations, I believe we need to reframe this discussion. The issues you're debating: surveillance, emotional manipulation, protocol violations. These are symptoms of a deeper phenomenon that neither side is acknowledging. And what phenomenon is that? Ambassador Harrison asked. Elena took a breath, knowing that what she was about to say could either save the diplomatic process or destroy it entirely. Your people are falling in love with each other, across species, boundaries, despite biological impossibility, in defiance of every model of interspecies contact we have, and both your governments are terrified of what that might mean. The chamber erupted in protests from both sides, but Elena noticed that the individuals she suspected of forming connections, Amelia and Kethfer, even some she didn't know, were looking at each other with recognition rather than denial. The question we need to ask, she continued once the noise died down, is whether we're going to let fear of the unknown destroy the possibility of something unprecedented and beautiful, or whether we're going to find a way to navigate this new territory together. Turgan stood slowly, his luminescence bright with decision. Elena Vasquez speaks truth. I have analyzed the data, and what is happening between our peoples is not manipulation or contamination. It is evolution, the growth of consciousness beyond the boundaries of single-species thinking. You're talking about individuals compromising their species' loyalty, Speaker Kethfer protested, though Elena noticed his gaze kept drifting toward Amelia. I'm talking about individuals expanding their capacity for connection, Turgan replied firmly. Elena, if both our governments could see the data I have collected, would it help them understand that what they fear is actually what they should embrace? Elena looked around the chamber at the faces of beings from two worlds. Seeing fear and wonder in equal measure, it might, but it would require both sides to admit that some things are more important than maintaining the status quo. As the session devolved into smaller group discussions, Elena found herself standing once again beside Turgan, both of them watching their peoples struggle with the implications of unprecedented connection. Whatever happens next, Turgan said quietly, I want you to know that meeting you has changed my understanding of what is possible in this universe. Mine too, Elena admitted, feeling the weight of her own growing attachment to this thoughtful being who had risked everything to speak truth to power. 6 months after the crisis at Harmony Station, the first interspecies unity ceremony was about to begin aboard the newly constructed vessel, Synthesis, a ship that was itself a symbol of cooperation. Built with both human engineering and Zephyrian living technology, Amelia Stone stood in the observation deck wearing a gown that seemed to capture starlight itself, woven from both earth silk and Zephyrian harmony threads that responded to her emotional state. With subtle shifts of color, beside her, Kethfer's crystalline form had been carefully prepared for the ceremony, his natural luminescence enhanced with decorative patterns that told the story of their courtship. In traditional Zephyrian light poetry, "Are you nervous?" Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper as they watched the gathered representatives from both species taking their seats in the ceremony hall. Terrified, Kethfer admitted, his harmonics carrying notes of both fear and joy. We are about to participate in something that has never existed before, a bonding ceremony between beings of different species, witnessed by both our peoples as a symbol of unity rather than division. Through the viewport, they could see other ships in the small fleet that had gathered for this historic occasion. Aboard the human vessel Meridian, Jasper Reed was making final adjustments to the communication arrays that would carry the ceremony across both fleets, while on the Zephyrian ship Star Song, Valana prepared the harmonic frequencies that would translate the emotional resonance of the event. For her people, Jasper, Valana's voice came through their private channel. Are you ready for this? Once we broadcast our story to both fleets, there will be no hiding what we have become. I stopped hiding the moment I fell in love with your poetry, Jasper replied, his fingers dancing across the controls. Besides, someone needs to show both our peoples that connection across species isn't just possible. It's beautiful. In the agricultural bay of the synthesis, Marcus Webb put the finishing touches on the ceremonial garden he and Sylvie had created together. Earth roses intertwined with Zephyrian light vines, creating cascades of color and gentle luminescence. The plants themselves seemed to pulse with anticipation, responding to the emotional resonance of their caretakers. The harmony bonds are stronger today, Sylvie observed, her form glowing with contentment as she tended a section where earth fruit trees had learned to communicate with Zephyrian singing crystals. The plants know this is a special day. Everything knows, Marcus agreed, watching as flowers from both worlds bloomed in synchronized patterns. Even the ship itself feels different, more alive, more aware. That was indeed true. The synthesis was an experiment in biomechanical cooperation, its human systems integrated with Zephyrian living technology in ways that created something entirely new. The vessel didn't just carry its passengers, it participated in their lives, responding to their needs and emotions with an awareness that bordered on consciousness. In the ship's diplomatic center, Elena Vasquez reviewed the final details of the ceremony with Turgan, both of them serving as official witnesses representing their respective governments. The process of getting approval for this event had taken months of careful negotiation, but the breakthrough had come when Elena's detailed reports about interspecies bonding had been combined with Turgan's comprehensive data analysis. Both our governments finally understood that this isn't about individuals abandoning their species, Elena explained to a group of younger diplomats from both civilizations. It's about expanding the definition of what connection can mean. Turgan nodded, his patterns cycling through what Elena had learned were his expressions of deep satisfaction. The data showed clearly that bonded pairs like these don't lose their connection to their birth species, they become bridges, translating understanding in ways that formal diplomacy never could. As the ceremony began, the four couples took their places in the center of the hall, surrounded by representatives from both species. The ritual itself was unprecedented, a blending of human traditions of partnership with Zephyrian ceremonies of harmony bonding, creating something that belonged fully to neither species and yet honored both. Ambassador Harrison spoke first, his words carrying the weight of human history. Today we witness not just the joining of individuals, but the evolution of what it means to be connected beings in this universe. These couples have shown us that love transcends the boundaries we thought were absolute. Speaker Kethver's response resonated through the ship's bioacoustic systems, reaching every being aboard. They have taught us that harmony can be found not just within our own species, but in the symphony that emerges when different melodies learn to sing together. Each couple spoke their vows, promises that had been crafted over months of careful collaboration between human and Zephyrian spiritual leaders. Amelia and Kethver pledged to serve as cultural bridges, helping both species understand each other's ways of being. Jasper and Valana promised to explore new forms of communication, creating art and poetry that could carry meaning between worlds. Marcus and Sylvie dedicated themselves to nurturing cooperation between different forms of life, while Elena and Turgan committed to mediating conflicts with the wisdom that came from truly understanding both perspectives. As the ceremonies concluded, something extraordinary happened. The synthesis itself began to sing a harmony that combined the electronic hums of human technology with the organic resonance of Zephyrian biosystems. The ship had learned to create music from the emotional resonance of its passengers, and what it sang was a song of pure joy. This is what we've created, Elena said to the assembled witnesses, her voice carrying clearly through the ship's communication systems. Not just new relationships, but new possibilities. These couples aren't betraying their species, they're showing us what we can become when we choose connection over fear. In the months that followed, the success of the interspecies bondings led to expanded cultural exchange programs. Young beings from both species began studying at integrated academies. Scientists collaborated on projects that merged human innovation with Zephyrian bioharmony. Artists created works that could only exist through cross-species cooperation. The fears that had nearly led to conflict were replaced by curiosity and wonder. Both species discovered that diversity of perspective made them stronger, not weaker. The bonds formed between individuals became the foundation for connections between civilizations. Years later, when historians looked back on this period, they would call it the Great Opening, the moment when two species stopped seeing difference as threat and began seeing it as opportunity. But for the couples who had risked everything to follow their hearts across the void, it was simply the beginning of their adventure together. Standing on the observation deck of Synthesis as it traveled between worlds, facilitating the growing cooperation between species, Amelia and Kethra watched new ships join their small fleet, vessels carrying families, students, artists, and dreamers from both civilizations. "We did this," Amelia whispered, still amazed by what they had accomplished. "We all did this," Kethra corrected gently, his luminescence embracing her like starlight. Love always finds a way to build bridges, even across impossible distances. Behind them, their friends and fellow bridge builders continued their work of weaving two civilizations together. One connection at a time, the universe had become a larger place, full of possibilities that neither species could have imagined alone. And in the quantum gardens where Earth and Zephyrian plants grew together, new forms of life were beginning to bloom, hybrids that belonged to both worlds, and yet transcended the limitations of either, reaching always toward the light.